talking to us, Llama, because we can't hear you.
Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us this evening. It is a privilege to have you here alongside the gruesome twosome that is FPL Buna and Matt. How are the two of you this evening?
Brilliant, mate. Harvey Barnes has just scored. Come on.
Oh, has he actually?
Yeah.
So he has. Yeah, it's just popped up there, 1-1. Busy week, or are you doing all right?
Yeah, it's been a busy week. I wish it was Friday already, but we're not far away now.
Nope, you're just one day away. Good evening to everyone in the chat. Thank you for joining us. Privilege, as always, to have you here. However, I know you're not here for the three of us. You're here this afternoon or this evening or the morning, as Matt would say, wherever you are in the world, to speak face-to-face, audio to audio, chat to chat, text, with our special guest. Will we get him in?
Yeah, go on then.
Alright,
All right,
let's
go on
do
then.
that. Okie dokie. So today in the studio we have alongside us one of the faces that assists the fronting of the Fantasy Football Scout on their YouTube shows. He's a man who's involved in all areas of FPL, from team analytics to the team injury watch. He's an ex-journalist that ensures there's no misquotes or baiting headlines in fantasy football as one of their editors, main editor. He just hits us weekly, daily, with a hard truth. But it doesn't stop there, oh no. As if being full-time and in and around FPL, he's also found the time somehow to write and release his latest novel, Writing in the Sand. Check that one out on Amazon, which is out now to purchase on Amazon in paper version and also on audio. And he still does all of that while maintaining his own very own social life and family life. He's a true trooper, and we're looking forward to getting to know him better. With over 22 followers on Twitter, also making appearances talking FPL on TV, alongside his routine appearances on Fantasy Football Scout. His name might indicate that he's only there one day a week. However, this guy's 24/7, and we are proud to welcome him into the studio this evening, the one and only Mr. David Mundy. How are you, David?
Oh, well, what intro. Yeah, I'm deeply honoured, but also quite relieved that I was able to follow up that introduction by actually being here. I was just checking out the Broncos last week and was absolutely creaming myself that, oh no, like, that's going to be so embarrassing. That's going to be so embarrassing if that's me. But, wow, I thought you can all hear me, which is great. So what a start.
It looks like everything's fine. You're coming through loud and clear in my ears, and I'm assuming the chat are the same because no one's actually said otherwise. So we're assuming everything is fine. But
Good news is good news.
You're right. Last week, though, what a belter that was, David. Honestly, big build-up and then just dead silence.
I half wondered if they were a bit upset with the intro in some way, but
yeah, that's what we thought. Yeah, Matt said the same. He was like, I think they just gave up. So I think just to kick it off, as we always do, David, with our guests when we get them on, the first kind of 10-15 minutes or so, we in the FPL managerial world, you know, we know who you are in terms of what content you do and what you produce, etc. But it's just to try and get to know you a little bit better. So Matt Buna and I are just going to harangue you for the next 10-15 minutes and just get to know Mr. David Mundy. So who is David Mundy?
oh wow, what an open-ended question. I mean, normally it's me that asks the questions, as you say, with my journalistic background. It's quite weird when I first stopped being a journalist and was the editor of Fantasy Football Scout. And on the other end of interviews, it was just the weirdest thing. I had no idea what to say. I was just like, I can't believe anyone wants to know anything about me. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the you know what I do outside of FPL, I suppose is where I'll start, because I guess that, as you say, everybody kind of has a basic idea of what I do with that. Always kind of, whenever I do these appearances, I always try and convey something that people probably find a bit strange about me, but you know, it's just kind of what kind of just comes with the territories when you work in football or FPL. Because I mean, I've been working in football now for I think 7 years, six or 7 years. Before I was, you know, because I've been doing Scout for 2 and I was a journalist for 5 before that. It kind of gets to the point where when you do a job that's something that you're passionate about, already, it can be quite easy to kind of like the lines get blended between like what's work and what's not. So it means that where I'm at now, at the age I am, and with the family that I've got and the other commitments in my life, it means that I'm often sort of, I will always take any opportunity I can to basically take some kind of step away from following football if I can. So because you just can't do it 7 days a week if it's also your job as well. Which people, whenever I say this, people are like, "Whoa, that's crazy! I can't believe that you didn't sit down and watch Burnley Crystal Palace or any of the games." But that's nice. That's really great. If Burnley Crystal Palace is on my day off, I'm like, thank you, FPL gods. That's so great. I don't have to watch that.
of all the matches you could have picked, you've picked that one. Oh. Thanks for that.
Yeah. I tell you what. So when the pay-per-view was on, I won't go into too much of the ins and outs of my thoughts on that subject, because I think we all, everybody knows the kind of outcome of that. But it just felt so soul destroying. Sat there in my office because I work from home anyway, and it's like, right, what am I doing at work tonight? Right, I've got to pay £15 to watch West Brom v Burnley. I've got to write 1,000 words about the game, and then when that's all done, I've got to put the £15 on expenses, and Fantasy Football Scout's got to pay for it. Like sometimes it's like it's actually quite nice to have a day off from the football. So yeah, I mean that's kind of like that's how I operate now. I have to take a step back whenever I can. But I always stay informed. I mean, like there are so for example, Sunday's my day off most weeks, and that's often when a lot of the big games are on. So thankfully, anyone who knows who Neil Rigg is will know that when I have a day off, Fantasy Football Scout is in exceptionally capable hands. So he's able to kind of do everything that's needed, and then I'll just on the Monday, that's when I'll kind of sit down and I'll have a look at the ins and outs of the big game if it was like Man City, Liverpool, or what have you. So yeah, the way I kind of like cover and live out FPL is very different to a lot of people. But that's just how it is. You gotta do it the way that works for you and works for your family. So yeah.
No, that's it. I mean, I think that kind of leads into the next question. So you're saying there that you normally would have a Sunday off. So when you do get that time away from FPL, what is it that you tend to get yourself? What are you getting into? What are you up to?
So I mean, it's kind of like it's a 50 sort of 50 split between family, and as you've already mentioned, I'm quite a big fan of writing fiction. So in the interest of doing my wife justice, I'll start with the family.
You've got to slip the bits in first.
Should.
Brownie.
Yeah, exactly. Just in case she's listening, she's in the next room, so who knows? She could be in there with a pen and paper. She works as well, so she's a photographer who I'm actually like. It's not even just a case of I'm proud of what she does. It's the fact that she's so good with Photoshop that basically I never have to pay anyone to design the front covers of my books anymore. I basically just have to do the washing up and she'll do it for me. Great. So. I spend as much time as I can watching whatever it is she'd like to watch. She absolutely hates football, like with like a seething passion, like so much. So that's another reason why I just have to step away whenever I can and sit down and watch some Downton Abbey. Or she's watching Gilmore Girls right now. I'm probably in trouble for not watching it with her, but
okay.
Make up for that later. I've got 2 daughters as well, and they keep us busy as well. Me and my wife are quite stubborn, so it means the children that we've created are like double stubborn. It's just oh man, you think you have a hard time picking who you're going to transfer a captain this week, but man, when you're trying to convince your 4-year-old that she does in actual fact need a wee, oh my goodness.
That's a whole new level. We're going in it there.
Yeah, exactly. But it's one you just can't prepare for. Like I was so not ready to be a parent. There's so many different things that you just never think you'd have to do. But it's great. I mean, they're at the age now. They're 4 and 2. The youngest one's nearly 3, and the oldest one's nearly 5. So like, I'm just amazed by how much they comprehend. Like it's amazing how much they can engage in kind of the things that I enjoy. So I mean, in terms of what I would do on a Sunday when the football's on, and occasionally in the background, if I'm exceptionally being compulsive about my captain, I might stick it on and put it in the corner. But we'll probably sit down and watch. I don't know how I manage this, but I've managed to really get I'm probably the only one who's done this. I managed to get my 4-year-old and 2-year-old just hooked on Star Trek. I don't know how I did that. They just flipping love it.
That was so we watch a bit of that. There, I'm sure there was, David.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was quite convincing at the beginning, but
Yeah.
I think they like it more than me now, which is amazing. So, it'd be like my day off, and they'll just be like, "Oh, Daddy, can we watch some Star Trek today? Yeah, we'll watch some Star Wars." Or my eldest is particularly desperate to watch the second half of Empire Strikes Back because I want her to be old enough to actually be flabbergasted by the fact that Darth Vader is Luke's father, but she's too young to know what that really means yet. So she's watched like the first film. She's seen like the first half of the second one, but I always stop it when Luke's just arriving at the bit where he's going to find out he's his dad, and she's like literally her life goal is to get old enough just to find out what happens at the end of that film. So
Yeah.
I feel quite proud of the fact that I've created not even just a boy, like a 4-year-old girl that wants to know how Star Wars ends. I feel like that's an achievement to be quite proud of.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Well, when are you
definitely.
getting her into FPL?
Oh,
And more importantly, editorial.
Star Wars is more important.
I tell you what, she's her writing at school is amazing. That's what I mean. Like, there's so many things you just didn't think that they were so capable of nailing so quickly. So yeah, she does quite like football actually. But she's more into playing it than she is watching it. I think it's partially my fault because I don't really watch enough women's football. I probably should. I probably should get to watch them more. But if I'm trying to have time off and not watch football, it's kind of hard to squeeze it in. But yeah, we used to take her to kind of like a tots like football thing before lockdown, and it kind of that's one thing she's really missed during lockdown is being able to play football. So yeah, unfortunately she's not on the editorial staff of Fantasy Football Scout yet, but who knows if in 20 years time there's like a women's Fantasy Football Scout, you might be wondering whether or not you're going to captain Little Monday in game week 2 or whatever. So that's the hope.
Perfect.
No, absolutely. I'm going to go slightly off kilter with a question that you're not aware of and Llama's not aware of.
Oh, jeez, don't do this to us, Bruno.
And it's basically, obviously, you're at the moment, this season in particular, you've taken a slightly more back role in terms of not being out in the public eye and just focusing more on the editorial side of things, as opposed to doing as many videos as you were last year. So you're quite involved, I presume, with this. The statistical side of things as well. How do you kind of avoid over-analyzing information like that? Because I'm someone that my preference is always the eye test, but I too do quite like looking into stats. What sort of player are you in that sense, and how do you kind of avoid over-analyzing when you're kind of doing this as let's bear in mind you do this, this is your job.
That's a really great question. I think, the eye test versus stats is something that that you would ask most people anyway, who was going to come on here. But as you say, like I spend so much time in the members area that like it's basically like my vision is like the Matrix. There's just numbers in front of my face all the time. I think to make sure that I'm not overanalyzing, I try to just keep my parameters the same, like all the time, because I do generally prefer stats to eye test, not like completely. If it was kind of like a pendulum swing, I'm sort of like closer on the spectrum to the stats than I am to eye test. But yeah, I basically I have a set number of tables that I just always use, and I just always go off those particular categories. So I've got one open here now. So I basically I have all my players out. I have a table that has every player in the whole division. I don't break it down by position because I don't normally like to be kind of restricted by formation when I'm working out in inverted commas who's the best. I basically just have penalty area touches, key passes, big chances created, shots in the box, big chances, shots on target, shot accuracy, and goal conversion. Because between those stats, it all kind of link together kind of nicely, but they give you a great sort of like kind of sweeping picture of what everyone's good at. So because I have them all together, it means that I'm a big fan of players like Salah, Grealish. I was always a massive fan of Hazard, like players that would tick a lot of those columns because they had assist potential and like goal threat. As you said, there's so much that I could go and look at, but that's my starting point. And I just kind of like, because it is a job, it means it's easier to kind of put structure in my head. I look at my day and it's like, right, well, I've got to edit that article, write this one, and then maybe plan next week, which leaves me an hour to work out my transfers. And then when that hour's up, I'm done. I'm not going to spend like 7 hours poring over XYZ because I just can't. So it's kind of handy being in that position. I'm very blessed to be, because I know everyone would love to do a job like this. So, because but in answer to that question, there's enough structure there for me to not overanalyze. But on the subject of overanalyzing, something I found really interesting when I did start here was, as you know, I like to get involved on Twitter, and I'd like to think people haven't thought I've stepped back in the last 2 years, but I think I was a lot more prepared to kind of read what was on Twitter before I had this job, because I wasn't so plugged into the members area. So my primary source of where can I get my information was Twitter. And I'm not knocking it at all. There's great stuff on there. You have to be very careful not to. That was where I was worried I'd read too much. I think if you end up just reading everyone's opinion, it's very hard to know exactly why they've come with that, because it might be a good opinion, but you might not know why they think that in terms of, what data have they seen, how many game weeks have they seen within that. But because you guys all know what it's like on Twitter, you can scroll through your timeline. One guy be like, Salah, getting rid of him. Next person, I don't know why anyone would get rid of Salah.
Every day, mate.
That is Twitter summed up in a sentence, pretty much, when it comes to game week decisions. And I think for me, and we've spoke about this before on the show, that's enough to pickle anyone's head, especially if you're new to playing FPL. Because if you're in that Twitter sphere as a bubble and purely just in there, then you'll think that's like the whole of FPL, every FPL manager's doing that. Like what you say, I'm getting rid of Salah. Oh, well, if he's getting rid of Salah and he's got 25,000 followers, I better get rid of Salah. So then, you can go down that whole rabbit hole. So
the thing is, with Twitter, it's so much easier to be swayed by someone else's opinion, but then when everyone's opinions are like clashing into each other like nuclear missiles going off at the same time, you can end up just getting confused. And then I think that's where overanalysis comes from, because you start to work out, well, why does this guy think he should stay? Let me try and find some reason for it. Why does this guy think he should go? And so then once I basically kind of cut that out of my kind of like, this is me making decisions part of my day, and then just focused on the numbers, then when I'm looking at a table, literally the only thing that can sway me is facts and numbers and hard evidence. And to be honest, I'm obviously here and I'm obviously going to talk about Fantasy Football Scout. I'm going to take any opportunity I can get, but like, in terms of like the difference that made, it was like massive, because stepping into the job, I basically had the best season I'd ever had in my first season. I was spending all that time in the members area.
We noticed.
I was coming to this because I noticed the change. Not to say you didn't take the game seriously previously, David, but there was a noticeable change in your finishes the last 2 seasons. Would you put it down to that then?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because before I was kind of like scrabbling at as much data as people were prepared to put out for free, because I wasn't plugged into scouting quite the same way. But then when you have some kind of membership that has all of that information there, that helps you cut through the noise. I think that was really the thing. Like that first season I had it, I was a lot braver in terms of going against the crowd, because I would see things on Twitter and I'd be like, I know that's wrong. I'd see someone have an opinion. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone in specifically or anything, but it was easier to, when on social media, see something and be like, I actually know that person's wrong about that, or maybe not as right as they think they are, because I've seen this in the data that's really convincing. And then it just made me more confident. I think the classic example of that, where it paid off right near the beginning, was, I don't know if you guys remember, Cardiff obviously were in the Premier League, and I remember this so vividly. It was game week 8 and Spurs were playing Cardiff and nobody had Kane, but everyone wanted Kane. Like, everybody absolutely piled in on Kane.
He blanked, didn't he?
Yes, exactly. Everybody piled in on Kane because it was Cardiff, and it was like, that was it. It wasn't like, oh, and because Cardiff have conceded this number of chances, or they've been thrashed this many times, it was like, lads, it's Cardiff. And like, for me, that's just not enough. So what I did was I went into the members area, I looked at Cardiff's defence and saw that it wasn't great, but it wasn't awful. And whenever you want to pick a captain, you want someone playing a defence that's truly dreadful. And that exact same week, Hazard, who obviously is a midfielder, so gets more points than Kane anyway, for the things that he does, was away at Southampton, whose defence, specifically at home, was really, really bad. So and the thing is, I was so nervous at the time because I was new to everything. I was on the Scoutcast, and I was on a Scoutcast with Joe, Andy, and Az, who are all way more experienced than me, that were like, I can't believe you're going without Kane. And it took, without wanting to big myself up, balls of absolute steel to just not get Kane. and just captain Hazard instead. But I was making that decision completely on the data that I was seeing in the members area, and came blanked, as you say. Hazard got a goal and assist, so he got like 14 points. So I doubled it up to 28 in a week when the average was like 40 points because everyone had taken hits to get Kane. And then I kind of like I rose up to like 5k from like 110k in one game week. So like that right there is the difference that like you can make by just like getting some kind of membership and looking at the numbers and making decisions based on your interpretation of that and not sort of like everyone else's opinion. It's amazing what I can do.
I'm going to need to go back into this, I think, Boona. David.
In line with that, what's that?
Back into like,
the stats.
maybe looking at stats, yeah. Maybe I've
Yeah.
taken the eye completely off the ball, because like a few seasons ago,
Yeah.
I was looking into stats and stuff, as I was kind of knife and forking my way through FPL, as you do when you first kind of come in. And I think maybe because I didn't fully understand what was behind the stats, that's what was pickling my head, so I just went back to the eye test. But now that I've got a better understanding, that's probably the way I should maybe have a look at that.
Oh, really? Haven't you and Matt been taking the piss out of me for considering looking at stats, yeah?
But this is...
I personally think it's a load of tosh, personally.
I'm not listening into it. We've got living proof in David Munday right now that it works, okay? All I'm going to say is, David, what stats do you focus on more than others then? Because I am a member of FF Scout already as well. And I tend to look at like shots in the box, chances created, big chances created for attacking assets. What are your kind of go-tos if you were to choose a few?
Yeah, I mean they're the ones that I'm a big fan of. I think I try to keep it quite simple. If I can, the eye test does kind of come into this a little bit because I tend to look at shots on target was one that I used to swear by, but I don't swear by it quite as much as I used to, because you can watch the eye test enough times and we see David McGoldrick, he would not necessarily like miss loads of chances, so he would like end up being quite high on shots on target, but his shots were just rubbish, like they were absolute pea shooters. So like that one needs a bit of eye test to kind of go in there. So for me, I tend to look at now, if I had to sort of like pick one or two big chances, and so that's measuring the quality of a chance coming to a player, I'm quite keen on. Then comparing that with big chances created as well, because another sort of like trap you can fall into with stats, because I do appreciate that it, like just saying the word stats, like that's not everything. It's quite a nuanced picture. Chances created, for example, like key passes, is quite misleading, because you guys all know that James Maddison, for like the first year and a half he was in the Premier League, there was a lot of, he's great, his stats are amazing, like he creates lots of chances, but they weren't great chances. So like if he crosses the ball in from a corner and it like grazes the top of Johnny Evans' head, that's a chance created, that Johnny Evans has had a shot in the box and it's not on target, because you know what I mean, like he's put his head forward, and it's just that doesn't really count. And that happened quite a lot. So then if you look at big chances created, so you're looking at players who are creating chances, but the chances that they're creating are more likely to be assisted. I found a lot of joy in terms of getting players in who do quite well in that area. So I've got Ziyech, for example, Grealish, Fernandez and De Bruyne are kind of like obvious inclusions in that. But, players like Zaha and Neto have done very well this year, and they're players that do well in that category. So there's a lot of correlation, I think, between looking at big chances created, because then you're really just scything through all the chaff to find out who's creating and shooting with the best quality.
No,
Absolutely.
I get that. And I think maybe this would be the point to let the chat know, because some people already, David, I don't know if you've seen it, but I've certainly seen it all over Twitter, that unfortunately people are already beating themselves up over the team that they've got, the rank that they've got, all that kind of palaver. They're quitting FPL, they're cutting down their teams, exiting the building, so to speak. However, us here in the Llama Lounge have got your back. So what we're going to introduce from the new year, Boona, you told us on the cast last week, the date, I think it's the 9th of January, there or thereabouts, whatever game week that is. What we're going to do is run a tournament then. So we're just going to start a brand new league. So fair enough, yes, if you've got your chips, then you may have a slight advantage. But what we want to try and do is just tell people, don't give up, it's just a game. Enjoy it for what it is. But to give you another opportunity to try and win something, what we're going to do is give you a year's subscription to the Fantasy Football Scout. So as David mentions there, you will be able to go in and see what's happening in the members area on that membership, and we will also get a Llama Lounge trophy out to you for whoever it is that wins it. So if stats are your thing, or you just want to get in and understand what David's talking about, there's your opportunity. If you come into our Discord, that league code will go live in the new year, and we'll get that started at the start of January.
Brilliant little segue that.
Yeah, just thought I'd let the chat know that there's every opportunity to get involved. And talking to the chat, before we crack on, getting to know David further, Matt, who's all in this evening, and is there any questions that have been piling in? Because I'm kind of seeing it. David mentioned the Matrix earlier, and that's what the chat's like this evening. It just constant scrolls here.
We've got Simon Bellamy in the chat asking Cancelo or Diaz. Obviously, Man City is a massive question mark this week. So what's your views on Man City as a whole, David?
They're a bit annoying at the moment, aren't they? Because on paper, like, they're so obvious, but you watch them and, oh man, like, what's going on? I think fixtures normally will help a team like that get the form that they need. So I think people should be piling in, but sensibly setting themselves up to benefit from that. So De Bruyne, I think, is an obvious one. Burnley might not have Pope this weekend, actually, which
Yeah, I just read that,
maybe,
actually. Yeah.
Yeah, which may be really good if you really want to attack that with like a Sterling. Torres looks kind of exciting as well. Like his stats are amazing, but obviously the thing is you don't know if he's going to start. To answer the specific on Cancelo versus Diaz, I'm going to be really kind of sneaky with this, and I'm not going to give a definitive answer. If you want someone with a higher ceiling, go Cancelo, because he's more likely, in my opinion, which as much as that counts for. He's more likely to get like a double-figure haul. I think they will get a clean sheet against Burnley. He has created more chances than any other defender in the last 4 matches. So, if they're going to use the left flank and he's starting, then I think he can have a double-figure haul. But of course, and Mendy's back now, so there's a maybe slight chance that he doesn't start. I don't think it's massive. But with that in mind, Diaz, I think, is the more, in inverted commas, stable option, because you'd imagine he'll get rotated less often this season, kind of across the course of the season, because nobody really wants to be rotating their best centre-backs, for one game week to the next. And they obviously exert themselves considerably less than a fullback does. So that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I think it kind of maybe comes down to what type of manager you are, to be perfectly honest. If you're a more kind of aggressive go-getter, I don't want to say maverick, because I don't think Cancelo is a maverick pick, but you kind of understand what I mean. If you want to go for something that's got high ceiling, Cancelo, but if you're a bit of a dullard, somebody likes to play slow and steady, then Diaz is the one.
Thank you very much for that. Anything else, Matt?
I've got a good question to add. Obviously, being part of Fantasy Football Scout, do you ever feel the pressure of having to finish high up for the sake of getting like stick further down the line, or are you just like, F them, I'll do what I want?
I love this question. I love this question so much. I've got so much to say on this question.
You crack on.
Yeah, so I think my view on that has changed. When I first started, I very much felt the pressure to do much better. When I first started, I mean, the thing is, replacing Mark Southerns was always going to be like just a completely impossible task. Which the earliest possible opportunity I had the opportunity to realise that it didn't really matter who I was. Like whoever was going to follow Southerns up was going to, it was going to be a learning curve. So I just kind of, just try and do it my own way. So at the beginning, there was pressure there, and it made me quite nervous whenever I did kind of any kind of appearance, doing stuff like this or being on Scoutcast or going on TV. The fact that I had a good year in my first year was kind of like, I'm so glad that happened. Like if in my first year, if I'd have had a dreadful year, I don't think I could have lived it down. But I finished 17k, and I spent actually like such a large period of the season in the top 10k and just missed out at the end. That was the best possible start I could have, because it kind of now means that anyone who didn't really know I was before then can kind of look at, even if I have, because I finished 50k last year, they can look at those two and be like, he probably knows what he's talking about. He's probably qualified to do the job that he does. So I'm now at the point where, like, I've got those 2 seasons in the bag where I've proved I'm not an idiot. I'm not a genius, but I'm not an idiot. So now I don't have to kind of like feel that pressure anymore. I can kind of just enjoy the game that little bit more and just kind of just see where it takes me, to be honest. And like, if people have a problem with my rank, I think it matters less anyway, because kind of some of the stuff that we've done on Fantasy Football Scout this year is I've been really keen, and other members of the team have been really keen to kind of get slightly more authoritative voices into what we offer. So, we've pulled in some people that are like top of our Hall of Fame. So people like Fabio Borges, Darren Wiles, and Stephen Harrop. These are guys that just always do really well. We've got Late Riser involved. Obviously, he's won India twice. Like, what a legend! Like, winning your country even once is an incredible achievement. But to do it twice in 5 years, I mean, you've got to be like. You've got to be a demigod to do that. So,
you kind of got to know what you're playing at, eh?
Yeah, exactly. So,
on that,
having those guys on the
shameless plug, in 2 weeks we might have Late Riser joining us. Just keep your eyes poised.
I'll tell you what, that'll be a good episode. He's such good value. Everything that comes out of his mouth and everything he writes is it's so insightful. It's incredible. So having him around it takes a lot of pressure off me, because now, I do a lot of the journalistic stuff. I'm the guy that will watch the games, and I'll be the one that maybe notices that like Wolves played in a back four and what that meant for X, Y, Z. Or, it's like I did an article last week on Calvin Phillips is back for Leeds. So what does that mean for their defensive prospects? Like, that's the kind of stuff that a journalist at like The Athletic or BBC Sport, like, they would do that anyway. Like, I've got that very much in my locker. So I can specialize in that.
His chances this weekend, David.
Calvert-Lewin. Well, I think Calvert-Lewin, I think, will probably still get something, but basically Leeds, when they've got Phillips, they just defend much better. They can see fewer goals, and so actually for Everton versus Leeds, if I had to captain one player from that game, I'd captain Bamford. So
wow,
interesting.
Yeah. I can get into some stats on that a bit later if people want more detail on that. But the handy thing is it just means that, like, I don't care where I finish this year, because it doesn't matter anymore. I'm the guy that basically, I'm the manager now. And, the people, I've got an incredible team. I've got Late Riser, who's like a premium 12.5 midfielder. I've got people like Az and Andy, who are my kind of like my glue guys, and my 6 million midfielders that can just set and forget options, that I can just roll out their incredible opinions, packaged up nicely with well-cropped pictures, edited copy, and as you said, not too many baity headlines. So yeah, it's great. It means it doesn't, people don't really have to kind of like assassinate me anymore if I don't finish in the top 1%.
I love the way you describe your team there. I bloody love that.
Yeah, I don't know how I would get on trying to do that. Like Vince Chapman, Boona. Yeah, my team might be all over the shop actually if I started going down that route. A few good questions coming through the chat actually, Matt, this evening.
Yeah, we've got
David.
Yeah, we got Toothco in the chat. David, what is your strategy attacking mini league rivals from a transfer point of view?
Glad you said transfer point of view.
Yeah, just attacking them out.
Just like drive past the house and like cut their internet off. Sure, they can't make any transfers this week. Maybe hack their account. Find out who hacked hacked Andy and Neil, and maybe that's how you attack them. But yeah, from a transfer perspective, okay. So I reckon, first, like absolutely essential resource, I would say, for this question is you got to use live FPL. The features that are on there, like most people use it to just check their overall rank, but a lot of people don't know that if you look at some of the features along the top, you can do live leagues. So you can basically look at like analysis and analytics and metrics just purely for your mini league. You can find out what percentage in your mini league owns Calvert-Lewin. You can find out what percentage of them still have this chip left. Obviously you can't always foresee their moves coming, but if you want kind of like as much information at your fingertips to work out, right, well, how can I either get above him, or how can I make sure that I stay above her, or like whatever, like you have whatever you're aiming for. The main thing is to make sure that you've kind of like stacked yourself quite nicely in terms of like, because we all like to know what the effective ownership of like Kane is in the top 10k, but if you know what the effective ownership of Kane is, in the league with the lads you play football with, it just gives you a much better idea of like who you need to hold on to, who you need to kind of like bring in, who people are more inclined to captain. Also, it pulls all information in terms of like, oh, did they forget this week to do something? And then you kind of like get an idea that, well, I'll tell you what, if they're going to forget things, maybe I don't need to be too worried about them. So that's the site I use when I'm just I'm trying to make sure that I stay above my dad, basically.
a couple other good ones as well, David, as well as the other ones that we've still got floating about in here, actually. But from Eric, good evening, Eric. How are you? Hope you're doing well this evening. I am curious to know if David believes FPL will continue to grow in popularity and how that player increase might change the overall FPL strategy.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think, right to ask it in terms of like it's ballooned in the last number of years, which is great. It's great news for content creators like us because it means there's always going to be someone ready to pay attention, which is great news. I think it will continue to grow because I think it's such a compelling concept. And as we all know, incredibly addictive as well. It's so hard to quit FPL. And it's very easy to pick it up. So I can't really see it doing anything but growing. You think about how many people love watching football worldwide. It's massive. So it's a great way of pulling people in. It makes total commercial sense in the Premier League to keep pushing it because it means that you actually care about the result between West Brom and Burnley, whereas previously you wouldn't. But then in terms of how that would affect strategy, I think, you sometimes get this idea that with more players, it's harder to kind of do well. And I think there is an element of truth to that. If you were to maybe compare it with like 7 or 8 years ago. But I think there's a great quote that Simon March, who obviously won it in 2014-15, I think it was, he sort of swears by that it was probably the biggest thing that helped me make improvements personally, I think, is that he says, let consistency be your differential in the sense that rather than spend every week like kind of looking at all the available options, like, I need all of them now, and you're constantly chopping and changing. Like sometimes if you hold on to a player through kind of like tough fixtures because you reckon they got enough to maybe get through. A great example right now maybe be the Spurs assets, like a Son and Kane. Someone who is kind of experienced and has played the game for 4 or 5 years, you're always going to be in a better position to beat the new players turning up because you have seen the kind of the fruits of letting consistency be your differential. Not many will have a slow and kind of steady hand to this because that's what you need. Like if you're going to have a good season, you can't just be chopping and changing your team like every 5 minutes. You can maybe risk a -16 that turns into a free hit over an international break, but
I'm just scribbling down.
Was that bigger Buna then?
The point is, Abuna doesn't do that every week. He doesn't do that every week. That's the thing. That's what I mean. So, but the casuals are really bad at panicking. Which might, I don't know, I'm sure someone out there will find that offensive. But as more and more people join this game, there will be more and more people that make bad decisions, at least at first, and then they'll get better over time. So if you are still doing well, and you've been playing this game for a number of years, I wouldn't worry too much about changing the strategy. Just stick with what you know and go with that.
No, perfect. Dre, that kind of leads into Dre's question. Evening, Dre. Hope you're doing well, pal. His question was, what do you think less experienced FPL managers do that are wrong? Like, what mistakes are they making? And I suppose that's kind of what you're saying there, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. In a way, I can't really blame them because I think that the content that we do as Scout and the content that FPL does as well, I think we without really meaning to, we accidentally cause quite a lot of panic in people each week because we're duty bound to tell you who we think is going to do the best this week, right? Yep. So it means that in any given week, we're going to probably pick out 5 players that just get absolutely flogged to death every week. And so then if you're not an experienced manager, you're going to look at that noise, which might be justified noise. You're going to look at that and think, oh, man, I've only got one of those. Yep. I'm going to have to take a ton of hits to get them in. And I think, so I always use my dad as an example of literally the absolute model of what not to be as a fantasy manager, because that's exactly what he does. He logs in on a Saturday morning, he goes on the FPL app, he sees what the scout's been pushing, and he's like, right, well, I'll sign all of those players for a 12-point hit, just like every single flipping week. And it's just, it's so cringe-inducing. It's embarrassing. I mean, he's an extreme example in a lot of ways. I think that kind of underpins what a lot of the inexperienced managers do. And then you're already at an advantage with these players that are prepared to kind of break their team all the time. Basically, inexperienced managers don't have so much of an idea of team structure over a 6-week period, whereas people like us, we understand that a lot more.
Well, you say us. When you have a look at the state of what I've been getting up to this season, you might rephrase on that one. Anderson, hiya Anderson, he's in the chat. Another good question there.
I like his question.
Shall we bring him live on it? Because he's in the waiting room and you can ask that question in person. Yeah, he is. Yeah,
he said on.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, if he's sitting,
I'll bring him in.
Anderson, if you're listening, we'll bring you right.
Just remember, mute the YouTube.
Anderson, you're in, buddy.
We'll give. There we go. Folks.
Hiya, how are you? You all right?
Yeah, I'm decent. Good.
Good.
My question, David, was with the news of all this, with the government tiering of between 2 to 4K averages of fans in grounds, do you think that'll have much of an impact on some of the results we're having with it being such a small number of fans?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one that we've all sort of been preparing for because we sort of sensed something was coming, and obviously, of course, now it's here. We can kind of like think about it in a bit more of a concrete way because I think it's game week 11, right, that we're going to start seeing these fans in, which, by the way, is great news. You know, just apart from FPL, it would be really nice to have these fans in.
Definitely.
I think. I mean, I always try and caveat my answers as best I can, cover my backside. I think it's hard to say exactly what scenario that's going to create because, as you say, it's quite a small number of fans, and a lot of the players that we're going to be having in our teams, they probably won't have played in crowds of that size too often. Some may have done, maybe if they played at lower league, but even then, 4,000 seater stadium with 4,000 fans in is a completely different feel to 80,000 stadium with 4,000 fans in. So I think it can have some effect, and I think that teams that kind of are maybe lower down the table we aren't doing as well as we kind of like. So, for example, like Sheffield United, I think are a team that really thrived off that because you can see how poor things are this year. Obviously, they've lost Dean Henderson, but there's lots of factors. I think fans is one. I always reference Aston Villa as a team that when there is any kind of crowd, the players there thrive off that.
Yeah.
So I think there'll be something there, but yeah, it's really hard to say exactly what effect that will have until we start to see it a little bit more. We're going to try and do some analysis on it on Scout, at least to begin with, but obviously it will be caveated as much as we can.
Yeah.
But then after a few weeks, we'll have the opportunity to kind of look back and see what impact it did have. Because I don't think it would necessarily always be positive. I've been around enough football grounds in this country with some of the work that I've done before to know that fans at home, it doesn't always mean you do better. Sometimes there's some teams that really suck at home because the fans maybe kind of have a level of expectation that's not quite matched by the manager's ambition or the player's ambition. So then so where I've best seen this actually, there's a Premier League example that people can maybe look back on in recent times and understand is Southampton at home. Last season, they were getting tonked at home, as we all know, famously in the 9-0, but that wasn't the only one. They were getting beaten like 3-0 at home by Bournemouth, and that is embarrassing. But away from home, they were all right. And the reason was that I think that the fans had come to expect a certain level of performance with good reason because Pochettino had done great work there and they'd been a decent team for a long time. So it meant that whenever they saw their team try to sit back, try to soak up pressure and maybe hit the teams on a rare counter-attack, the fans would get kind of uneasy and get annoyed and they'd start complaining. And when 20,000 people start complaining, the players sense that. And then the players then kind of sometimes go in on themselves and then they start making more mistakes because they doubt themselves and they start to think, well, hold on, the boss wants me to play this as a sideways ball, but there's a flipping nutter in the front row who's going to kill me if I don't play it forward. So like that can happen sometimes and it doesn't happen everywhere, but I've seen it happen in lots of different places. I live in Plymouth and there was a time when it used to happen with Plymouth Argyle as well. I reckon that a team, so for example, Aston Villa, I don't think that's going to be a problem because I don't think they play defensive football. They play really exciting, kind of free-flowing football. So it'll be interesting to see if there are any teams that start to struggle at home when the fans start getting back in the stadium and they start getting on their backs again.
Because I think that's like, am I right or wrong in saying that? I'm sure Anderson, from what I had seen, it would be the likes of Liverpool teams. So your Liverpool, Everton, obviously, they are able to get fans in, but the two Manchester clubs, as an example, won't be. Is that right, or is it along those lines?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. I know that they've relaxed down to tier 2. I think was the plan for the Liverpool region. Right. I think Manchester's still going to be in tier 3. So yeah, that may be possible if that is the case.
Certainly does create kind of like, but it potentially creates the opposite of a level playing field in some ways.
Well, that's what I was getting at. Yeah, David, if you imagine like your Liverpool, just for argument's sake, Liverpool and City are the two runaways again this season, just for argument's sake, but I'll argue with that anyway. If one club's allowed fans in and the other club isn't, I don't know what effect that could have, because as you say, it could bring pressure to one club and ease the pressure on another, or rile them up to, I don't know.
Exactly. I think that's the thing. I think while it looks like it could create some kind of imbalance, I think it might even out just because, as you say, I think, imagine you are playing in a team, let's say West Brom, a team that sort of has the capability to sit back and defend. If you're going to play Liverpool, who've got 4,000 fans and you can't take any, and you spend the whole game like everyone behind the ball, every time you win a tackle, you're going to see another Liverpool fan get more and more frustrated. And then every time you see another Liverpool fan get more and more frustrated, you see another Liverpool player get more and more frustrated. So the fact that you've actually got no fans there could be a positive. So it's not saying that will happen, but I think there will be games where the team with fewer fans get the better result out of the game.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I didn't really think of it like that.
The other part of that question is as well, with the tiering and the 2,000 and 4,000, is that just geared from what I get? That, for example, Liverpool, is it just them that can take the fans and it's no travelling fans, or is it split 50-50? Who knows?
See, I think probably reading between the lines, but as you say, I'm not 100% either. I think it'll just be purely home fans.
I would have thought so.
Yeah,
I think it's maybe to do with who can travel where and who can't travel. So I think right now, my dad can't come here, for example. So then it would mean that if he was a fan coming to a game here, he wouldn't be able to come. But I will say that it wouldn't be the first time we were all confused about lockdown rules. So we'll just have to see.
We've certainly been confused on that. No, thanks very much for that, Ian. That's brilliant. And as I say, just on that, I noticed, Buna, that you'd posted the link to the Discord in the chat, which is greatly appreciated. David's here for the next half hour or so. So if you do want to pop in, or if you're a wee bit shy, then obviously just pop them in the chat and we'll try and get through as many as we can. Elite's here as well. Good evening to you. Hope you are doing well. Before I get on to Smash or Pass, how many times a day do you think you get asked to look at drafts?
Do you know what? It's a lot less often than it used to be, and I feel bad because it sometimes sounds like a harsh thing to say, but it's kind of like it's written into the kind of the content creators code that just unless you post something saying, "Oh, I can look at your team for the next 20 minutes," if you ask me to look at my team, to look at your team, I'm probably going to ignore it. Especially when what tends to happen is I get it on. I think where it annoys me most is Instagram, because on Twitter, yes, I do most of the time tweet about football. Sometimes I tweet about my kids. Sometimes I tweet about the books that I'm writing. Sometimes I'll tweet about other things, but most of the time I'm talking about football. So if someone's going to reply to a tweet saying, "Look at my team," I come to expect it, but I am going to ignore it, because if the second I start replying to all of them, I have to start, more people will ask. But on Instagram, what annoys me so much is Instagram is completely football free. What I post on there is pictures of my kids. I post pictures of the Christmas tree going up. I post a picture of the walk I did with my wife. Oh, I had a nice walk with the wife this afternoon, went up to Dartmoor. One reply from so-and-so. "Who should I sign this week? My team looks terrible." And it's I don't care. I literally could not care less, because I am using this platform to celebrate my family life. So please go away.
Yeah, that's it. Jason, hiya pal, how you doing? Oh, we've got a Penguin's just popped into the chat. Hope you're doing well, Penguin. No seen you for a wee while. I think we'll move into Smash or Past. Pass? Why do I keep saying past? David, you need to put your mind into this little scenario here, okay?
Right.
So, it's the final seconds of a Champions League final, and you, David, are through on goal with the ball at your feet, and you're one-on-one with the goalkeeper. You're about to put your boot through the ball when out the corner of your eye, you see your teammate standing there. Now, you know that if you pass to him, he's surely not going to miss, because he's now got an open goal. However, David, it's you that's got the ball at your feet. So what are you doing in that situation? Are you smashing or are you passing?
I'll tell you what, I think I'd definitely take the shot. I think I definitely would. I'm the kind of guy that when I'm on the football pitch, if I've got the opportunity to score. Yeah, I was going to say I play football with Buna, so he knows. And to be honest, I think Buna's the same. I seem to remember when we played together, me and you were absolutely firing the shots off, which is good. But so that's just the way I play. I play kind of a number 10, but I'm somewhere between a number 10 and a forward, to be honest, whenever I play. So the goal scoring gene is very much ingrained in me, and I've got a left foot. So it means that so I'm left-footed. So it means that sometimes goalkeepers are a little bit wrong-footed by that. So I back myself in that situation, and I reckon I
sneaky
should.
thing that being a left footer. I'm the same as you. I'm left footed, and you're right.
Yeah, but you'd fall over the ball.
Oh, come on now. You've not seen
You try and
the
pass
left
it and
peg.
fall over.
You've not seen the left peg on me. I was renowned for that growing up. But no, thank you very much for that. That was a decent, good few questions. We've got to know you a lot better. I'm sure there'll be plenty more questions filtering their way through in the chat as well.
There are.
So we'll crack through the questions, I think, as we're going along. But what do you two want to? What do you want to do? Do you want to bring up some teams and try and get pick David's brains? He can slate our teams a little bit.
Yeah, we can do that. You bring those up.
Cool.
I'll
do that
go
in the
through
background.
a few more questions that I got from Twitter. The first one, David, being your thoughts on not captaining DCL
Yeah.
after detailing in your best captain's pick pod for FF Scout.
You
fantastic
didn't,
double
David.
coincidence of events to come. Fulham conceding a header goals versus DCL being the best header in Europe. The argument was compelling enough for me, even though I had Bruno, Mane, Ziyech, KDB, and Richarlison. That was from Pundit in Purgatory.
Great
Wow. I mean, I
question.
feel like I'm in purgatory now.
I hope you're sat down while you're answering that one.
I love questions like this. I get them all the time because it's so funny when you on Twitter and you have a certain number of followers and it's FPL rather than just being something else. There's more kind of like a sense of entitlement from your followers that like, why didn't you do this? You said this was good. You didn't do it. If I was just a normal journalist, or if I was only an author instead of being an FPL person, instead of crazily attempting to do both of those things, people would be so much nicer. They would be like, oh, that was nice. Whenever I post a picture of like my kids like putting the tree up, I wouldn't get flipping questions like this. But it's a good question because but the short answer is I'm a coward. That was why I didn't go Calvert-Lewin because I have Fernandez. Fernandez's backing in the top 10k was just absolutely huge, and I understand why someone will be annoyed about that. But actually, I worked it out. If you own both, which I did, and so did Pundit in Purgatory. Like if you captained Fernandez instead of Calvert-Lewin, which is what I did, you only lost out on 2 points. So. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to spend more than that on my next hit, so who cares?
Fair dues. As I say, as we were saying, any questions that you've got, please just pop them in the text chat, or if you do want to join us in the lounge, you can do. David, this team in front of you is from Young Matt, and what I have noticed is I haven't actually updated the weekly points, so apologies for that on the top right hand.
Don't update them either. Don't update them.
Yeah, they're a little bit out by a game week. But
ironically, what David was just saying is exactly what I did. I had Fernandez and DCL, and I did captain DCL.
Nice, smart move.
So
I got
93 points, Matt.
93 points, but took a -8. 93 points, but took a -8, so 85 points.
Luke.
So, yeah, most of them banked, other than, I think it was Grealish, Watkins, and Bamford off the top of my head, I think.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, you must feel so frustrated not to have done the ton, get 100 points when you watch Bamford, hit the post twice?
But this is the thing, if you look to the right-hand side, Arsenal is who I support. So I will take the Bamford blank.
Only they put points on for hitting the post.
Exactly.
That'd be perfect.
But I got the Meslier clean sheet, so it was like one of those double-edged swords where I'd rather Arsenal win, but I'll take Meslier points on it.
I think the other thing as well, Matt, with your team is the fact that you've got Salah sat there, because again, like what we were talking about, you look at Twitter, there's a lot of scrambling to try and get Salah back in people's teams. Now, well, in theory, in inverted commas, we think he might be playing at the weekend. You would think so. So you're not one of those people, though. Do you want to let David in the chat know what you're doing for the game week that we're heading into? Any transfers you've done?
David, make sure you're seated for this, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. I am taking one free transfer. Someone I know, and his stepson's actually in the chat right now. His dad's like his brother. Someone I work with, the engineer. His brother is the head coach at Aston Villa for the goalkeeper. And the quote's coming out of what he's told me today, because obviously I had to ask, how long is Barkley out for? And apparently from the squad, they have said 2 weeks. Barkley is out for 2 weeks. And what I said to these guys, like back when Barkley first come in, Grealish is only an option when Barkley's in the team. Now, Barkley's not an option for next 2 weeks. I have taken Grealish out for Fernan Torres as my free transfer. And I'm also, this is why Boona said sit down, I'm going to captain Jota this week.
Nice. I love moves like that. I really do. Like, because it takes what I don't have, which is like real bravery in terms of like, because as you saw last week, I went Fernandez, didn't I? So
Yeah.
I really like that. And do you know what? It's kind of interesting you mentioned about Barkley, because I did an article on that, the game where they played Brighton, looking specifically at what Grealish had managed to achieve in that game without Barkley. And it was quite ominous as a Grealish owner, because the reason they work so well, obviously, is that they sort of combine together, and Barkley does a lot of the running. You know, it means that when they break from midfield, Barkley's the guy with the kind of like making the gut-busting runs to then get Grealish into better positions to shoot. And what we saw in that game was, losing Barkley in the first minute, Grealish had one shot. That was it, and it wasn't wasn't even in the box. So I basically compared what Grealish had done in game weeks 1 to 8. Grealish had 3.1 shots per game, but then in the first game that he didn't have Barkley, after Barkley had become so important, just one shot against a team that isn't really that good defensively. So I think there is a case to be made for Grealish, being moved on this week, and because I've got Grealish and Watkins as well, and I'm thinking about getting Bamford in for Watkins for sort of similar reasons. Villa without Barkley will be nowhere near as good.
Interesting. No, thank you for that. And Matt, that's been you've had a right good start to the season, I would say, this year.
Well, my tips haven't paid off, because I've been like YOLO in this season. I'm like balls to the wall, take hits, try and get up the rank. This week was my best one. I went from 1.2 million up to just under 600k, I think it was. So that's my highest.
Same as David. David, you're on the same, right?
Mm.
I think so, yeah. I'm not really looking at my rank as much this year. I do apologise. I'm sort of like freewheeling it to see what happens.
I'm the same as you, David. I'm just blind to my rank. Whatever it is. I wouldn't know. However,
Premier League managers do it as well, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
They get asked if you've seen the table, and it's like, no, I haven't looked at the table in this situation. So yeah.
That's exactly it. But no, we have moved on to your team. For those who might be listening back, we forgot to do this with you, Matt. But for those that might be listening back on whatever the podcast may be, whether on Anchor, whether it's Google, I don't know, Spotify, Apple, whatever it is, here is Boona's team. So he had Mendy in goals that got him 6 points. He had then Chilwell on 7, Van Arnold on 2, and Telles on 6 with a back 3. 4 in midfield, Fernandez on 11, Rodriguez on 2, Aubameyang on 3, Grealish on 1. Up front, he went with the captain's armband on Martial, which got a massive 4 points. Richarlison on 5, but he did have Calvert-Lewin in there that got 13 points. David, what do you think of Boona's team? And Boona, where is your head at as we move into game week 10?
One second, let me just.
Did you explain that this is actually a free hit team as well?
Believe me, I know all about this team. How could you not? Like, this team was like the most famous team on FPL Twitter for the whole of international break.
I'm not actually on Twitter, so I don't have a clue what these two get up to.
Matt, as David said, this Boona must have had about 272 drafts over the international break.
What I loved about it was the slippery slope of the narrative. It was a case of like, oh, lads have done a -4. Oh, do you know what? I think I'm going to do a -8. Yes. Oh, I'm going to do a -12, -16. And it was just like every time people were people love watching other people take hits, because people aren't brave enough to be like Boona, right? So I'm going to pay you the compliment on this, right? So people were loving that. People were loving the entertainment value of that. And then when it was like, oh no, I'm even throwing the free hit at it. The narrative was so good. So like, it was absolute comedy gold quality, like standard entertainment.
It was the way the Twitter masses jumped on him as soon as he hit the free hit button. It was like, you just trolled us for 10 days, Boona.
It's so good. But that's what Boona does. It was just like, he's basically kind of like he's strung all these people along, and then it's like, lads, free hit. Syringes on the tweet. Oh,
Matt, guess who scored
Yeah, man, I'm watching it. Pepe, boy.
Oh, Pepe. Where?
My boy.
Talking of trolls and strangers.
Yeah. So yeah, Buna, that's the team. As David says, it was Twitter famous there over the international break.
That was the team. Out. Was being the key word.
Yeah. So what have you done, or what do you want to let David in the chat know about as you move into the next game week?
My team prior to that was horrific, and sadly it's back.
The worst part of a free hit, isn't it? They all just come right back, and you're like, I got rid of you, you useless. Oh,
what are you doing back?
So from potentially doing that -16 and then free hitting, you're now potentially back on a -16.
Well, this is what I'm intrigued to find out, Anderson. You're right. I want to know, is he actually now on a -8?
I'm currently on. Drum roll, please.
Go for it.
It's going to be like -20, isn't it?
Free transfer.
Oh, Bruno.
Oh.
It will not be staying. It will not be staying on that. I've been waiting to see how who plays tonight, like for Leicester and Spurs, before making my moves. So I've got a few different transfers in mind. It'll either be a -8, a -12, or a -16. It depends how risky I'm feeling. At the moment, I'm over a -8, and that would be getting rid of two really problematic assets in my team in Podence and Trent. I'm potentially thinking to bring in Harvey Barnes. No, I know people are split on that. And maybe Fofana or Diaz.
Harvey Barnes starting tonight, isn't he?
Say again, sorry? Harvey Barnes, yeah, he scored as well. Yeah, he scored as well. So, alternatively, if I go -12, I might also, as part of that transfer, get rid of Harry Kane and bring in Vardy, which would allow me to increase my defender. Instead of Fofana or Diaz, go up to a Walker. So it could be Walker, Barnes, and Vardy. That's what I'm eyeing up at the moment. I tell you what, though, KDB's, like you said earlier, David, KDB is also quite an attractive player to own with the Pope injury, but I've already got Sterling, so I'm not sure if I necessarily need him this week.
I think if you had a choice between two Man City players and no Leicester, or like one Man City attacker, and then you've got some Leicester coverage in there as well, I think you definitely take that latter option because you're spreading yourself across 2 games, so you're not as many eggs in one basket. But also, it's Fulham. It's going to absolutely destroy them, aren't they?
But also the fact that Leicester play on the last day of the game week, which has its pros and its cons.
Yeah.
I like to have players towards the back end of a game week, but in the current climate, with everything going on, that just opens them up to more risk of COVID because they'll be tested again, I presume, before that game. I don't know if you know, David, how many times they get tested if they play on a Monday. So those that play on a weekend, I presume they get tested once. Those that play on a Monday, do they get tested on a weekend and before the game on a Monday? Do you know?
I'm not sure. Yeah, no, apologies. I couldn't tell you exactly when the testing happens. But you might be onto something there. But mainly because the important thing is that the testing doesn't care about the FPL deadline. You know, if you're going to have to make that decision before the test happens before the game, then that kind of is something. But these are just the factors we have to think about in this like crazy season, really.
We won't really ever know. Like, who knew about Zaha? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. No one knew Zaha was going to get.
A lot of teams are very good at keeping under wraps.
Oh, he went straight out my team as soon as that got announced. I was like, you're the whole cause behind these tits. People like you. That's not his fault, obviously.
Interesting team news for Spurs this evening.
Yeah, just pop that up in the chat there.
Son and Kane both were benched or rested.
Yep.
Gone for a pretty weak team. That really tempts me to keep, because I've got both of them at the moment. I might just keep both, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know why you are personally.
I've already wildcarded them both out, which doesn't mean I think they're bad options. I'm just trying to be a bit more aggressive with the fixtures that are like kind of like floating around. But I do think that anyone who's holding on, I think they will end up doing better than people expect.
Yes.
You just hold on to them, especially when the fixtures turn back to being positive again.
This is what Late Riser tweeted about as well, because I think he was not getting flack necessarily, but people were saying, or people generally, I think he was just responding to the general consensus on Twitter, like, why would you get rid of Son and Kane? And his point that he made was he doesn't think they're bad assets. It's just we think that the players that we're bringing in for them are likely to do better in the next, run of fixtures. And I think that's a fair point.
See, I think the thing for me, I was looking at it thinking, well, Son is like a talisman in your team, Boona, in Spurs. And even although, yes, on paper, some of the fixtures are quite difficult, if anyone's going to do anything out of them, it probably will be Son or Kane. As you mentioned earlier, I can get value out of or I have already a couple of weeks ago, got rid of Kane to get Vardy in, so I can spread my money a little bit better in that regard, but I can still keep Son in there, and that's my team there, David. And my strategy this season, by the way, just to try and put you in the picture a little bit, ignoring ranks, because we're sat in the same sofa here, was to chase price rises for the first 10 game weeks. I said this to the lads, and I said it to everyone, regardless of rank, I just wanted to try something different this season. So my team value's getting there. It's round about, I think, 104 million, something like that, which is not too bad in the first 10 game weeks. And I think, as we were talking about this yesterday in Discord, funnily enough, I think I might see the fruition out of that happening later in the season when I start to use my chips. Because, in theory, in my head anyway, the squad value is going to keep on going up. So that's my layout. Now, what I was going to ask you, David, because interestingly, you were talking about Bamford earlier, and we had a right good debate yesterday in Discord about this, about my team, and do I start Grealish or do I start Bamford? Like, where do you go with that front eight? And I'm not putting you on the spot. It was a belter though, and it went on for ages. My missus was going off her head because I was meant to be doing something, and I was sat there for about an hour and a half debating it.
Mate, you had more important things to do than listen to your wife. No, seriously. This is big stuff. This is big stuff. You know, just got to understand that.
Exactly.
I think just to comment on your strategy of chasing value, there is a lot of good reasons to do that, and you've mentioned a lot of them already. Mark Southerns is like a massive fan of that. Like, that's how he plays the game. First 10 game week, chase that value, then it means your first wild card is going to be more effective because you can have more of the more expensive players, and the same is true then of the next wild card. So yeah, it's definitely a good way to look at it. On the Bamford thing, I'm gonna annoy anyone who hates like religious stat adherence here, but there's just a lot of really encouraging stats about Bamford that are just, I think, like kind of too hard to ignore. So we'll start with the fixture, right? So it's Everton. In the last 4 matches, their expected goals conceded is 7.12, which is the second worst in the whole division. The only team that should have conceded more goals in that period than Everton, Sheffield United. You know, they conceded 11 big chances, which I think is the third worst for that. Like, they generally speaking, their defense is not that good, and of course they've lost Luca Dini as well, so they're down another key player.
Is that going to be a good thing or a bad thing, David? Because he's been quite attacking.
True. Yeah, so I think that Everton maybe if we're talking like if we're saying Calvert-Lewin versus Bamford, not having Dini available, I think is a bit of a bad thing for Calvert-Lewin. But of course, Richarlison and Rodriguez are still they're still going to offer plenty of threat. But just on the point really is that Everton's defense hasn't been very good in the last 4 games. It's actually been quite bad. So then when we look at what Bamford can do in that game based on what he's done against other teams, in the last 4 matches, he's top of the league for shots in the box. He's 5 ahead of the second highest for that. So he's like miles. He's in complete like his own league for how often he shoots. But it's not just a case of how often he shoots. The quality of his shots are great too. Of his 18 shots in the box, 8 have been big chances. That's the top in the whole league for that as well. So no player's had more big chances than Bamford. And if you worry about his goal conversion and shot accuracy, well, no player has more shots on target in the last 4 matches as Bamford either, with 9. And Vardy is 1 behind him. So when you look at those 3 stats in unison, he's shooting a lot, shooting with high quality, and when he is shooting with high quality, he's getting the shots on target. So if you marry up that with the fact that Everton's defence looks poised to concede, I kind of can't really see how Bamford doesn't score in this game.
So that was kind of where the argument was well, not argument, but like good debate that we were having. It was all around Pickford. That's where it started, and how much he can be a little bit of a liability in goal for Everton. Therefore, that's in Bamford's favour. Then the whole debacle with Barkley that Matt, what you just were talking about with regards to Barkley not being there, therefore is Grealish actually going to output what we think he might for the next couple of game weeks? And then with Digne just getting, or not just getting announced, but it coming out that he's not in the game, I think based on that, and also based on what you've just said, I think I'm best just swapping Grealish for Bamford and going the 3-4-3. So thank you.
I think if I was asked to start one of those two, it would be Bamford. So yeah, it's a tough call because Grealish is still always capable of something, but I think whenever you make these decisions, you've got to look at probabilities.
Yes.
And so Bamford would be where I go.
Smashing. No, thank you very much for that. So we'll move into your team, and as we're moving into your team, David, there was a controversial question that got mentioned in Discord yesterday that I was to ask you, but I was not allowed to tell you who asked the question.
Okay, that's fine.
Obviously, it goes without saying we lost an absolute legend of the game, unfortunately, yesterday in Maradona. And the question came out, when David comes on, Llama, are you alright to ask him, would he raise his hand to score a goal to influence a game of football? And I thought, it's a right good question. So there you go, David. As I bring your team up, what would you do?
With Maradona, I would absolutely handball it, 100%. 100%.
That's as easy as it needs to be.
You'd smash it and you'd handball it. There's not even like a moment's hesitation.
Oh yeah. The thing, I am so competitive. It's unbelievable. I'm competitive in everything I do. I'm competitive when I play football. I'm competitive when I play board games. Like, if I don't flip and win a game of Settlers Catan, I'll flip and kick off like Roy Keane. So like, put that on a football pitch with emotions running high and adrenaline pumping, and like World Cup, what was it, quarterfinal? Yeah, 100%. Like I'm one of these people that I think people think I'm sort of like a little bit more sort of like above board sportsman. Like, he's got a blue tick. He's probably a nice guy. No, on a football pitch, I'm horrible. I'm absolutely horrendous. So I'd handball it so bad.
Can confirm that. Was that made?
Bruno knows. Yeah.
PS Vardy and Madison have just come on for Leicester. Under and someone else's. Harvey Barnes has just come off.
So, David, this is your team pre-wildcard. Now, I don't know if Buna does know what your team is currently in the wildcard motion. You don't, right? Okay, no, that's fine.
If you got my game week 19, that was my wildcard.
This one.
Game week. If we got Fernandez captained and Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah. So that's the right team. Sorry, yeah.
It was my wildcarded team. Yeah.
Perfect. No, it was just we were getting asked in the chat to show you the wildcard team. So this is your team as it currently stands with nothing done so far. Perfect. Right. Nice one. You can talk your way through it if you wish, and where your head's at as we head into game week 10.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit like frustrated at how it went, but I'm still quite happy with a lot of the decisions I made. Just plug Late Riser a little bit more. The article that he's done today was on about understanding the differences between what is a bad decision and what's a bad outcome. And I still think it was a good decision to have double Villa attack because their fixtures were good. Yep. The last final decision was Watkins versus Bamford, and now I'm thinking I should get Bamford, but I'll get onto my long-term strategy in a second. But, I think that was a good decision that had a poor outcome I just couldn't legislate for because, as we've already talked about Barkley, like who could have seen that coming, that him coming off after 5 minutes and then the impact that would have, and then that Bertrand Traore would come on and then he would take more free kicks than Grealish. Like you just can't see that coming. So it's annoying. I still feel like I made the right call. And then Ziyech and Werner, again, it's the same thing because a lot of people were wondering why I didn't go for Vardy and I did go for Werner. I've got about 1.3 million in the bank because my plan is to, in game week 12, get rid of Fernandez for Salah and get rid of Calvert-Lewin for maybe Callum Wilson because that's when Newcastle's fixtures get nicer. So either way, I needed money in the bank. So that's why I went for Werner. But I was so close with Werner to getting a big double-figure haul with the opportunities that he had and what he did with them. And then that also impacted on Ziyech as well, because obviously one of the opportunities that Werner had was he was through on goal, could have squared it to Ziyech. He tried to do what I would never do in front of goal, by the way, and to square it. And but he screwed it up. So, that would have been, 7 or 8 points probably for Ziyech. So, I'm quite happy with the choices I made, but now I'm kind of already looking at it and thinking I need to fix a few things. So I want to hold a transfer because I always like to try and do that at the earliest convenience if I can. Because like I said, for game week 12, that's when I'm getting Salah back. I'm not getting him before then because I back Fernandez and De Bruyne.
Right, okay.
To do better in that run than Salah. But I'm looking at Villa's attack without Barkley and the fact they're playing West Ham, whose defense, they're no pushovers.
Yeah,
it starts to make me think that I want Bamford, but Villa's fixtures are nicer. So that's what my worry is for this game week. And then outside of that, it's probably going to be a case of Yeah, I think my only other tough decision is who I start alongside Cancelo and Chilwell. Because Target versus Kufal, I mean, basically, I've got to start someone from that game. So I basically need to work out who I think is going to keep a clean sheet, and that's quite tough. So I may go with Kufal because I think he's got a bit more attacking threat than Target if Antonio is available. Because Kufal loves putting balls into the box, and obviously Antonio likes getting on into them. So we'll see. If Antonio is 100% fit, maybe I'll start him. But apart from that, I want to try and stay as settled as I can.
Yep.
I built this wild card to kind of make the most of the next 6 or 7 fixtures, trying not to deviate as best I can from that.
So where's your head at then with regards to City and regards to Chelsea? Because we've spoke about City and Chelsea a few times on the show over the past few weeks, with different managers, etc. And even City the game week previous shows that they weren't quite firing on all cylinders. And the opinion that was kind of getting drawn with regards to Chelsea was that it was as if you don't know what Chelsea's actually going to turn up on a week-to-week basis. So what advice are you going to give us as managers with regards to, I mean, obviously understand the stat side of things, but just in your opinion with regards to City? Because me, for example, I don't know, I wasn't interested or wasn't going to go towards City, possibly for at least another game week, possibly 2, only because I don't know what the whole script is, but De Bruyne I think would be the only one that I might go for, possibly. But no, to take your opinion,
Yeah, well, I mean, generally speaking, I try to take a kind of cautious approach, which I think is very much evident in who I've got there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've got the obvious ones, De Bruyne and Cancelo, and that I'm happy with. But I completely understand that. I think for a game against Burnley, I completely understand why people might use that as a bit of a test game to just see if they can turn over one of these smaller clubs before they then play West Brom, Fulham, Newcastle, teams that we can be a little bit more confident will get thrashed. But interestingly on that, because obviously Burnley's defence is very good, I think the Pope injury should have more of a confidence boost on anyone thinking about Man City than... So I think if you go a week early on Man City, I don't think you're going to be found wanting at all. But there's also the fact that even with Pope, Burnley just always get hammered by Man City. It just always happens. So in the last 10 meetings they've had together, in all competitions, they've lost like 23-1 or something. And then the last 3 times they've faced each other these are the games at the Etihad. So the last 10 at the Etihad, they've lost by that scoreline. But the last 3 times that Burnley have gone to the Etihad, in all competitions, so that's 2 Premier League games, 1 FA Cup game, it's been 5-0 to Man City every time. Yeah. So this is a team that Man City are fully capable of turning over.
Yep.
So I think if you want to go early, you will get something out of it. And then if you just want my maverick, exciting, aggressive pick, get ahead of the game, differential type player for this run, I do think Ferran Torres looks really nice, because I still just don't know if I can trust Sterling. I totally understand why people would want to go for him. But Torres he looks so on the ball, like club and country. He looks epic in terms of his goal scoring guy, and it's just the price, isn't it? Like 6.9, beautiful price there, and potentially really explosive. And if we look at last 4 matches, minutes per expected goal involvement for Man City, De Bruyne is obviously top because he takes penalties and he got the assist potential as well, but second best among all Man City players for that period for minutes per XGI, which obviously removes any of the sort of like, oh, this guy played more minutes than this guy. Second best for that is Torres. So if you get Torres this week, I think you could be laughing come the end of the game week.
Who drops out if Torres plays then, do you think?
I think he could play Sterling and Torres. And bench Mahrez, to be honest. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I always have to make sure that people don't think I know anything about what on earth Man City are going to do.
Yeah, they'll be knocking on your door, David. You told us in that Llama Lounge.
And it'll be on pictures of my Christmas tree, won't it? Like, oh look, my daughter's brought home a Christmas bauble she made at school. What do you guys think? You told me to get Torres. I'll be what happened.
On me.
But based on current form, I think Guardiola could get away with playing Torres and Sterling. Or do you know what? He's Guardiola. He could get away with benching Sterling. He can do what he wants. So who knows?
I think that's the other thing, Buna. There was, that's the thing with Pep. There's no rhyme or reason behind anything. Exactly. A little question, David. Sorry, I forgot to ask. It came up earlier by Davey P that's in the chat. When you're looking forward to the Christmas kind of period and the absolute ton of fixtures that come over that 2-week period, are there 3 assets that you'll have in your team for definite to get you through?
So one of them would be caffeine. The other one will be sugary drinks. And then the other one will be a wife that's prepared to bring me my dinner because I haven't got time between one game finishing and the next one starting. They're the 3 things that I flipping desperately need. Yeah, the Christmas period is always pretty nasty, but it's quite nice this year because I think we have quite a big gap between one game week, the one before Boxing Day. There's like a 5-day gap, which during Christmas, oh my God, it's like that's manna from heaven. I'm looking forward to that. But in terms of so was it like specific players or just like tips for that period?
Well, I suppose tips more than anything. I mean, or if there were any players from a particular team that you think, no, he's definitely not going to get rotated. He can handle that busy period. But yeah, I suppose your tips would be the best way.
So I think you put one out there already, which I really sort of swear by usually, is that players that if you ever caught in a 50-50. So earlier on I talked about Diaz and Cancelo, right? So if I was making transfers mid-December, then I would be more inclined to get Diaz than I would be to get Cancelo. Someone like Kane is very much rotation proof because it doesn't matter who the manager is, he just will not ever drop him, for better or for worse. I think he's got better at it now. I think he knows that if he plays all the Europa League games, he's not as good in the Premier League. So I'm glad for his sake that he's kind of worked that one out. But that's great. He will always play the Premier League games. So he's someone that I would look at. In terms of people that have good fixtures in that particular part of the season, it's quite handy that, Liverpool are playing like Palace, West Brom, Newcastle, around that sort of time.
Yeah. And
so then someone like Robertson is like, perfect for that type of season because no one's displacing that guy at all. And Palace, West Brom, Newcastle, that's double digit time for him, really, isn't it? Because we know what he can do going forward, and those teams aren't particularly good at scoring either. So someone like him is worth considering, I think. Also, I mean, the thing is, Aston Villa's fixtures are kind of nice around that time as well. So obviously just not Grealish, but if Barkley's out for 2 weeks, then maybe he'd be back by the time we get to game week 13 when they're facing Burnley, then West Brom, and then Palace. I tell you what, this year their defense is dreadful. Their defense is not what people think. When you look at Palace and you think, oh, solid. They've got 1 clean sheet in their last 17. So that particular period is nice for Villa, and there's no way the Grealish is getting dropped. So that's one thing I think you have to think about. Strong bench, obviously, goes without saying, is worth having too. The only other thing this year I think is different to other years is that, we've got potential double game week coming kind of like late Christmas or like a New Year or what have you. So what I would say is keep an eye on what happens with that before making any big decisions. My hope was actually to use my wildcard for that part of the season. In the end, I kind of felt forced into using it because of the international break. It's a bit annoying, but I wish I'd held it for that part of the season. So if you can hold your wildcard to all the way that part of the season, so when you've got more information about what the double and blank game weeks are going to look like.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Putting yourself in a good position.
Yeah, definite. I think we'll take a few more questions and then wrap things up, boys.
I was going to say we've got 2 people in the waiting room.
Oh, have we? All right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't even realise.
Rupert messaged me on Twitter earlier. Rupert, if you're listening, if you stop sharing your screen and unmute yourself, we'll bring you live on air so you can ask a question.
I've got another question while you're waiting, if I'm possible to jump in.
You go for it, mate.
Yeah, this another one for David. We're talking about obviously going on City assets. I've had Sterling from the beginning of the season because I wanted the differential. I've now switched him to De Bruyne. And I've taken Fernandez in last week for Salah. I'm wanting to get Salah back in exactly the same way that Marks said on Black Box the other night. And having watched that, he's now put doubt in my mind about taking Fernandez out for him or whether I keep De Bruyne. So I don't know what your thoughts are on the situation of me bringing Salah back in and which way do I go?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think if I had to choose between taking out Fernandez or De Bruyne to get Salah, I think I would take out Fernandez because I think I trust De Bruyne a little bit more. I think I'm not going to go as far as to say that Fernandez has got lucky because I know that if I do that, I'll get assassinated by someone.
Yes.
So I'm not going to comment on his luck or lack thereof. But I think in terms of like output, I don't know. There's something about De Bruyne that makes it more trustworthy. I think Man City's fixtures are a lot nicer. And to be perfectly honest, like for this particular Southampton game, you know, I wouldn't be massively shocked if it's a low-scoring game because I mean, I know that Southampton haven't played like incredible teams at home, but basically they haven't conceded at home since the 5-2 against Spurs. They've actually been not that team that plays with a stupidly high line anymore. And I kind of suspect that they're not going to be naive enough to play a high line against Man United. So something has to give in that game in the sense that Fernandez has had like double-figure hauls in all his away games this year. Southampton haven't conceded for 3 home games in a row. So something's got to change, and I don't usually like games like that. If a narrative has to shift and change, it's hard to know what the outcome's going to be. So therefore, I'm not going to captain that player. But you probably more likely to captain De Bruyne against Burnley based on his history against that club, Man City's history against that club, you know, all those sorts of things. De Bruyne would be the one I'd hold. On the subject of Salah, I wouldn't be hugely shocked if he didn't start. He didn't play too well in the Champions League. I mean, he's Salah, so he may well start. But for the first time in a very long time, Klopp actually has the opportunity to give him another rest because the guy who could replace him on the right flank of the attacking midfield is in the form of his life in Jota. So, personally, with my team, I'm going to do nothing. But I totally understand why you wouldn't want to go without Salah because it's so flipping scary not having him.
Yeah.
The only other side to that is I've obviously got Jota as well, so it would actually be.
Oh, what happened there?
Where'd he go?
I think I can guess at what the end of his question was going to be, is having a double up on the Liverpool players. I mean, again, that's not the end of the world because then you'd have them in place for that Fulham game. I think if you have Salah and Jota for Fulham, that could be hugely exciting.
For sure. Did Buna get the guy in? Or is Buna there?
No, I'll bring him in then. Throughput, I'm bringing you in first, and then we'll do John Magic for the last one.
Yeah.
Throughput is in.
Rupert, you with us?
Oh, I am, yeah.
Hi, how you
How's it
doing?
going, buddy?
Welcome to the Llama Lounge. You doing good?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly fine.
Hear you loud and clear. So young David is in alongside us here in the VIP suite. What do you want to ask him?
Well, just obviously, thanks for having me on board. David, massive fan of you. We have a WhatsApp group and you're the face of it, so congratulations.
Deeply honoured.
So yeah, and my thing is yeah, I mean this week is such a struggle, and I've really struggled this season, and honestly, like this season, and it's so annoying because I've got so many like casual friends in my league, and I spent all summer I spent like a whole 2 days putting a fixture list together, like amber and green and yellow and all this. And my girlfriend thought I was a complete sado, and then like two of my mates who are the ultimate casuals, like the Saturday morning, have a quick look. I put Calvert-Lewin against West Brom and he hauled, and I was just like, I can't stand this. And I went for Dele Alli like first week. And you know, it was just like
I had him as well. I feel your pain.
So and he didn't work out right, and you know, my season could have been so different, and I'll never forget it. And I remember a couple of years ago, so like my highest finish was a top 20k rank. It was 2015, 2016, and all I did was just get on the Vardy train like ridiculously early. And just every week, score. And that's might be my highest rank ever. But yeah, my question is like, how do you now look for like the next differential? Because it's become so much tougher to find that next differential, I find. And this season's just been so unpredictable as well.
So much variance from one week to the other. And I think as much as I'm a big fan of the stats, I mean, I always sing their praises. This is probably the 1 year where they're probably slightly less reliable than they were before for 2 reasons. One, the variance that we're seeing in terms of there's so much factors off the pitch that we just can't control and know about. The Zaha thing is like, that's a classic. Like, it's a COVID test that was positive that just no one got told about. You know, that makes a big difference. But the other thing is that VAR does also impact stats as well, because let's say you watch it, and this is why the eye test is more important this year more than ever, is because when you're watching a game, you'll see an incident where, a completely arbitrary example here, like Mane gets put through on goal from a Salah pass and he scores it, and then it's offside. The stats don't reflect that, so it means that you could theoretically have it. Let's say that was the only shot he had in the game.
Yeah,
it would then mean like the stats said he didn't shoot, but that's not true. So you have to kind of combine the eye test a little bit more than usual. But I would still back stats up as a way of highlighting these players when they start to do well for other people. Because really, if you're looking for a differential that your casual friends don't have, a clue about until they want to sign them because you've had them for 2 weeks, keeping an eye on who is shooting a lot and who's getting these things, getting big chances, shots on target. If you've got some kind of way of quantifying that information that they don't have, then you are, and if you just keep monitoring that, then and they don't monitor it, then you're going to have a greater opportunity to look at it. So I mean, someone who I got in with that reason, I think was Fernandez. I got him in, so I luckily had him for the times he did well, because I'd noticed that he was doing statistically some nice things. Shea Adams was another one. Obviously has some nice stats right now and isn't really owned by that many people. So I would keep an eye on that sort of thing. It sounds a bit sort of like, self-promoting, like go look at the Fantasy Football Scout members area, but it is very hard.
But I mean, I think the challenge is so like I've taken stats, but I've really dug in further, right? So this is completely sad, but I've taken how many shots, but how many on target. So Fernandez, over the last 4 weeks, he tops that because he has a 47% success rate for shots on. No, sorry, he doesn't. Sorry, I lie. Sorry. It is St. Maximin over the last. He's had 5 shots on 5 shots on goal, 3 on target. So he's got a 60% success rate. But St. Maximin doesn't pass the eye test because he's in the nicest sense, he's here, there, and everywhere. The eye test is always
a good filter for that. And I think, but the other thing is, interestingly, on accuracy, I don't usually look at accuracy rate. I look at sheer volume of shots on target. So, because you can then sort of, that lets the people who are regularly accurate from a larger base of shots. Does that make sense? So like Bamford looks great because he's not only got the most shots in the box in the league, his shot accuracy is 45%, which is actually pretty average, like as in a good way. Like that's a sustainable level of accuracy. But Shea Adams has got a 62% accuracy, but actually Bamford's still a better goal scorer because he's got 9 shots on target versus Adams is 5 shots on target. So when it comes to accuracy, I tend to actually just look at raw volume rather than a rate. So I don't know. I mean, it could be a thing to check out if you're looking for a way to find someone new.
Okay, no, I'll have a look at that.
Smash it.
Yeah, because thanks for the tips. I appreciate it, and hopefully I can move up the ranks.
Rupert, absolute pleasure for you coming on, and don't be a stranger either, mate. The door at the Llama Lounge is always open, so anyone that's new here, hope you've liked the stream, past comment underneath when it goes live, and if you like to subscribe to us, that's also greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for that. As I'm saying there to Rupert, you've seen the link to Discord in the chat. David's the first guest that we've had on.
It's Rupert, by the way.
Rupert, sorry. I've not got my glasses on, so I'm kind of trying to make things out here. Well, hey, listen, it wouldn't be a Llama Lounge if I didn't get a name wrong, would it? Let's be honest.
That's true.
So no, just want to say thank you very much for joining us this evening. I think we've got one last guest, haven't we, before we're wrapping things up?
Yes, we're going to bring on
John
Magic,
I'll bring him in just now.
Tell me if you can notice the difference between John Magic, the accent of John, and Rupert. They sound identical. How's it going, John?
They do. John, can you hear us?
I can. How's it going, Matt? You all right?
John.
Not too bad, mate.
Hiya, boys.
How are you? You all right? Long time no speak.
How you doing? How's it going, Rupert?
It's been a while. It's been a while. How's it going? Great stream, by the way.
Thank you.
Fantastic stream tonight. How's Mr. Munday doing? All right.
Very good, yeah. Nice to meet you again, Rupert. Is that what I'm supposed to say?
I've got a question for Mr. Munday. Well, personally, I'd love to see a new chip added to the game just to mix and refresh things up a bit. So, sorry to put you on the spot, but if you could add any sort of new chip to the game, David, what sort of chip would you go for?
That's a great question. Well, one thing I will say, I always get slaughtered for this, but I actually quite liked the all-out attack, the 2-5-3, because I'll tell you what, there's some weeks I look at my team and I'm like, it needs that chip. It's bad. So I would welcome that coming back, but I do think the free hit is better. In terms of what could be improved, I think I won't pretend to be someone who can completely revolutionize the game. So I will use is it Elite Serum as an example for some chips that could be brought in, because I'm pretty sure that they have a chip that allows you to have more than one captain in the game week, or there's one that is called like a rich uncle or something, where one game week a season it's like a wild card, but there's just no budget, so you can just literally have everyone if you want, which I'm sure that would have, people would complain about it, but it's a game, so I don't care if they complain about it. I think that would make it kind of fun, make it kind of chaotic and exciting. I tell you what, it'd be amazing if we had that chip. And Boona tweets, lads, I'm on -4, then -8, then -16. Oh, lads, I've played the rich uncle and I've got literally every premium player. That would be an incredible dynamic. So, yeah.
On that. Boona would jump all over that as well. What do you think?
We would, yeah.
What do you think, David and John, on the... Because it's been brought up a few times, actually, when that question's come up. You've got your players out there, like your Kantes, etc., that are just they're just non-entities almost. Great players, but you ain't going to put them in your team. So, a way of being able to get them more picked, I don't know how that would work, David or John, what your ideas would be.
I think, well, I've started looking at playing the Sky game as well, just for that reason, just because you can have a sort of a completely different variety of players in your team, but still score off them. There's nothing really for any sort of defensive mids in the game. But no one picks a Kante or a Matic from United. There's just, and it would be nice just to maybe offer, I don't know, a bit more of a bonus point situation where maybe midfielders got more bonus points. Well, not bonus points, but like points for successful passes or tackles, just to give you a bit more variety with your team selection, because these players never get a look in, do they?
So interestingly enough, Mark Southerns is a big fan of that. Whenever I've talked to him about any improvements that he would make, he says exactly that, with a slight tweak of it would be a case of what he would do is he would reshuffle and shift the structure of the game itself in so that you still have 5 midfield players, but you have to pick 2 ones that are classed as midfielders. So that would be like a Douglas Luiz or a Kante, and then the other 3 are ones who are like attacking midfield players, like a Salah or a Sterling, and then change the point system. So obviously forwards can't get clean sheets and stuff like that. You could make it so that defensive midfield category is the only one that can benefit from so rather than make it part of the bonus, make it if anyone in that defensive midfield category makes X number of recoveries, tackles, passes, or whatever it is a defensive midfield player is there to do, that would be how they'd score points. And then it would just change the way people play the game, but maybe open it up a bit more. So I think you're on something there. I think Mark Southerns has got a good idea too. So
smashing. Thank you for that. And John, don't you be a stranger either. I see you floating in about all these streams, and it's great when you're here and we're chatting. We'll just get things rounded up, I think, because obviously we've ran well over. Harbour Boy.
At this rate, David's wife's going to be assassinated.
Exactly, and I've already got people from Ireland that are female coming over to chase me after we kept them on for ages as well at the start. Harbour Boy did say there about about people who let poor results get to them and all the rest of it. I'm an advocate of it is a game, and don't fall out with the game of football, because that's the reason why you're playing FPL in the first place. I don't know what your views are on that, David, but try not to take it that serious that it's upsetting you ultimately.
Completely agree. I think this season more than ever has shown me that you've got to take that approach, because I think I don't want to get too serious because we've had a good laugh, but it's been a tough year for everyone, hasn't it? Like in terms of so many different things going on, and I think if FPL is what you're using to kind of use as a pick me up, it's a cruel mistress. If you're using FPL to cheer you up, you just don't. You make sure that you're doing something else in your life that brings you happiness that you can rely on, because you can't rely on FPL, which is not to say that it's not fun. It's not to say that it's not enjoyable, but it's too much of a roller coaster for you to use it as a crutch. So you've always got to make sure that you're just kind of balancing it with everything else in your life, which kind of comes back to what I was saying at the beginning. I'm very blessed in that I've got a family that's very supportive. I have a kind of second job in the books that I write that means that I can kind of, if I'm having a terrible week on FPL, I can just zoom off to another planet and carry on writing the story I'm writing. So, stuff like that. If people can do that instead of getting too upset about FPL, then I think that's a smart move in a global pandemic anyway.
Exactly. No, and well said. And you see what we did there in the Llama Lounge? We just brought everything round full circle. That's how we work. Went all the way back
Very
round
nice.
again. David, on behalf of the Llama Lounge, the chat, Buna and Matt will come in a second anyway. I just want to say a massive thank you very much. It's been an absolute privilege getting into your head, understanding you, getting to know you a lot better. You'll catch me about Twitter anyway, so I'll be bugging you as normal. So, but no, just want to say thank you very much. Before we
come on.
As I say, much appreciated. And again, don't be a stranger. You're welcome here anytime. We plugged your book at the start, but just for people that don't know, where can they find David Munday? And also plug your book as well at the same time, mate. Don't forget that.
Oh yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I don't get as much of a chance to do that on Scout because it would be a bit. I think it would be a bit dodgy if I use Scout to do that. Yeah, so if you want to find me on Twitter, it's at David Munday 815, and I'm pretty sure that's basically my handle on everything, like Instagram and YouTube and what have you. So that's where you find me there. My book is Writing in the Sand. You can find that on Amazon, and it's on Kindle and paperback. So whichever is your preference, then get that. I also have a newsletter for that as well. So obviously, I know I'm reaching out pretty far because most people here are football fans. But if you're into your sci-fi as well, then I have a newsletter where I kind of talk about sci-fi stuff that I'm enjoying, updates on my next book, which I'm hoping is out next year. Then you can find a sign-up form for that on my Twitter as well. So yeah, they're all the different places you can find me. And that's enough of a selfish plug. I'll end it there.
No, thanks very much. Again, for those in the chat, happy Thanksgiving if you're from over there. Thank you very much for joining us in the Llama Lounge this evening. It's a privilege you guys and girls actually joining us in the studio. Don't forget the studio doors are always open for you to come in. So like a few of the guys have done this evening, if you want to come into the lounge at any point, just come into the waiting room, join the Discord, come into the waiting room, and we'll pull you in. So instead of you putting your messages in chat, you can still do that if you're a little bit shy. Don't worry about that. But we want to get you into the lounge. That's what the lounge was created for, just to sit and just have a blather about all things FPL. Matt, Buna, over to you two.
Just like to say thanks, David, for coming on. I was quite shocked when Boona said that we got you to come on there. And it's interesting to pick your brain, like Llama said.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, it's been good to meet you guys, sort of in person, I suppose. Virtually is the way. This is the new normal, isn't it? So I can kind of say that now. Yeah, it's good to meet you in person.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, David. Honestly, I don't know where time's gone, to be honest, mate. Time's absolutely flown. I genuinely think we could have gone on for another hour if we had the time. So, no, I really appreciate that, mate. And it'd be great to have you back on at some point in the future. Some really interesting insights, some really positive comments as well. So, yeah, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And while I still got you, congratulations, of course, Boona, on your big engagement, which I'm so happy that you did it on the same weekend you triple captain Harry Kane. I just thought...
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
But no, as I say, thank you very much to everyone that joined us this evening. Thanks to those also that came into the lounge to talk verbally to us in the lounge. Much appreciated. As I say, don't forget to give us a cheeky little like. It's much appreciated. I think you're meant to do something about ringing bells and subscribing. That would be much obliged. Apart from that, you'll catch David, as he says, over on Twitter. You'll catch myself and Boona over on Twitter as well. And you'll get Matt and the rest of us if we're on the PlayStation and mucking about. But no, absolute pleasure as always. Take very good care of yourselves. Enjoy your evening and enjoy your next game week. And we shall see you on Sunday for the FPL Sunday supplement.
Wait.
Oh.
I might do a Q&A stream tomorrow, either over lunch or just before the deadline. Just keep your eyes poised.
Oh, well, thank you for that.
No worries. Adios.
Nice one. Take good care, people. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Dun, 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 dun.
can't hear us back, so I think we're fine.
I wish I found some better sounds no one's ever heard. I wish I had
Yeah, cheers again for that, David. We very much appreciate you coming on.
Well, cheers for having me. I don't get to do enough of these. I should, just kind of go on other people's podcasts. I've so much crept into the background on Scout, with good reason, as I said, that I kind of missed doing it. So yeah, great to do it.